So it's been an interesting journey this year. I finished the tail end of last year, finishing through and reading through the whole Passion, New Testament, Psalms, and Proverbs, and felt like as I started into 2022 that I was very excited that the Passion Translation had put out the book of Joshua, and that was where I landed at the beginning of January, and kind of devoured that, and then it's like, okay, Lord, then where do you want me to be reading? And he said, I want you to read Nehemiah. And probably there's 3 books in the Bible that I have consistently in my time as a believer since 1994, I have consistently hung out in. And it's Isaiah, Ephesians, and so don't stone me that it wasn't the Gospels. I do read the Gospels too, but the Lord consistently brings me back to these 3 books, and the other one is the book of Nehemiah. And I'm like, okay, Lord, what do you have in store for me now? It's like I could probably quote most of it. And so it was interesting to me and a great confirmation when Chuck, start the year off right in Tucson, started talking about the book of Nehemiah, because I was already a little bit ahead of the curve. And I'm like, okay, Lord, you're really going to speak to us through this. So it's been amazing as we watched Chuck's session twice, last Sunday and again Thursday. I'm now up to 5 typed pages of notes from what he released. But I felt like I was to marry what the Lord had been showing me in the book of Nehemiah, with what Chuck was speaking to us, so that we have a strategy and some game plan, right? Because we're not just going to be hearers of the word, we're going to be doers. Absolutely. And I was even thinking about that with Nehemiah. But I first want to kind of set the stage a little bit, and I'm sure you guys all know this, but it's a good refresher. So we're going to set the historical stage for the book of Nehemiah. So in the 5th century BC, the Jews were continuing to emerge from their exile from the Persian Empire. And the Persian Empire was accepting of God's people and were willing to let them to return to Jerusalem and Judea and to rebuild their nation. And God raised up a series of leaders to take charge of that homecoming. 2 of these leaders was Ezra, the priest, and Nehemiah, the governor. So you even see there, you've got the priest and that governmental working together to see the rebuilding. Ezra returns to Jerusalem in 458 BC and restores God's law as the foundation for the new Jewish community. Nehemiah comes along a few years later and is responsible for fortifying Jerusalem, managing foreign affairs, and rebuilding the population. Together they build a new society that grows and changes into what becomes the precursor of the modern Jewish faith. So Nehemiah's story picks up in 445 BC, and he was the trusted advisor to Artaxerxes I. When Nehemiah learns about the condition of Jerusalem, he gains permission to return. And this is where we'll pick up the story. But before we pick that up, the Lord was just reminding me, even as I was listening to the worship songs, Nehemiah spent this season, it was a 4-month season of intercession before he acted. And I think that's something for us to be very mindful of. But it's also, he didn't just stay in intercession, he acted. So it's the both and.
Right.
And that's such an important component of what the Lord is calling us to do. I mean, as much as I love to be in prayer and in worship, it's not that's not just all what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to get the strategies and then act upon them. So we're going to pick up Nehemiah's story in Nehemiah 2, verses 11 and 15 through 15. And I'm reading out of their Voice translation because I just love the way that this explains it. It says, "Nevertheless," this is Nehemiah speaking, "my journey continued until I reached Jerusalem. After 3 days in the city, under the cover of darkness, I was accompanied by a small group of men. The true God had placed a secret plan in my heart, and there I had left it hidden until the time was right." So God gives strategy, and sometimes we're supposed to percolate in that a little bit, or bring a handful of people in to that strategy before it gets released in a greater measure. It says, "And there I had left it hidden until the time was right." Gotta know the timing of the Lord. "No one knew what I had imagined for Jerusalem. With my men walking beside me, I mounted and rode around the city." At verse 13, "At night I went out to Jerusalem through the valley gate and headed towards the Dragon Well." And remember, Chuck talked about this, going from the valley gate to the Dragon Well and then down to the Dung Gate, where the city dumps its trash. As we went, we examined the walls of Jerusalem. They were as bad as we had heard. No stones remained standing, and fire had consumed the gates. We continued on towards the Fountain Gate and the Pool of the King, but amid the rubble I was unable to continue riding. There was simply no room, and so I dismounted and followed the valley, still under the cover of night, and examined the wall as I went. Finally, I had seen enough, and returned back to the valley gate, re-entering the city as I had left. And I found this really cool graphic so that you can really see, and it actually shows Nehemiah's journey in red, how far he went. So he came out from the valley gate, and he went towards the Dragon Well. So he was coming that way, and then to the Dung Gate. So you can see his journey as he started surveying the walls of Jerusalem. So I felt like that was an important graphic for you guys to be able to see that. So you can, now picture what Nehemiah was looking at. And he didn't go all the way around, as you can see. He went so far, and then he came back. He'd seen enough.
Right.
He knew the condition of the walls and the gates. So I'm going to ask Harry and Kaleo to hand out these cards, because we're not just going to be hearers of the word, we're going to be doers. Because this was one of the points that Chuck made. Nehemiah took 3 days to evaluate. And Chuck encouraged us to evaluate our sphere. What are we taking into the future?
This go on the cards.
So this is what goes on the cards. What am I taking into the future? What have I accomplished? And what do I need to let go of? So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to write those questions down. And even though you've got notes on your clipboards, I want you guys to take this and take the next 3 days and evaluate our sphere, your sphere, and ask the Lord to show you the answers to these questions. Does that make sense? Because, it's great to hear the prophetic word, and I think Debbie shared that tonight. It's great to hear the prophetic words and go, wow, that was an awesome word. And we don't do anything with it. And we're accountable for what is released. We've heard it corporately now twice. You've now heard it 3 times. And we need to be serious about this. You know, what do we want to individually and corporately take into this next season? What is it going to look like? And it's good to look at what we've accomplished. Celebrate the victories. I don't think I've said this before. We don't do that nearly enough. I don't do that nearly enough. I won't speak for you. I'll speak for me. I don't do that nearly enough. And then what do we need to let go of? What might have been really good in past seasons is not to come into this new place. So ask the Lord, you know, what is it that I need to let go of? I know I've had to simplify some things, and, you know, just prophetically walking through Jack and I, you know, having to downsize our home. You know, I've had to evaluate what I needed to let go of because I couldn't take everything with me into the new place. And there's a propheticness of even doing that in the natural. And I encourage you, even as I'm hearing the Lord now, I encourage you to really look at what you need to let go of. And I'm hearing there's even things that I want to be careful here. I'll pick on one subject. Maybe you have videos. You know, we've all got our DVD players and what have you. There are videos that maybe it was okay for us to watch in a prior season, but it's not okay for us to watch now. And even evaluating those kind of things, you know, are there things that you've held on to? You know, I know going through my own purging and looking at things, it's like, you know, this had an ungodly emotional soul tie to some stuff that I don't want to take into that next place. So I encourage you to be really serious about this and ask the Lord, you know, even walk around your house, you know, God, are there things that I need to let go of that, and it's not that they were necessarily bad in the last season, but you're not going to bring it into the new. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I want you guys to be really serious about this, about these 3 questions. You know, I could end now, because that's a lot, but I really encourage you and exhort you, as Chuck said, looking at Nehemiah, he evaluated for 3 days. So I encourage you guys to be serious with that. And if it takes more than 3 days, that's okay as well. But I want you to at least start. All right? You guys good? Yep. Still love me? Yeah. Always. So Nehemiah spent his 3 days evaluating, and then he went out on his night ride. And he went from the valley gate to the dragon well. And Revelation 12:4 says, the dragon crouched in front of the laboring woman, waiting to devour her child at the moment it was born. And as we're stepping into these new places, you know, we know that the warfare is greatly increased. And the enemy likes to come and devour us before we've begun. Because if he can get us off track in the beginning, we're not going to step into that new place that the Lord wants us to. And as Chuck said, you know, this is the lion versus the dragon wars. You know, he has that wonderful graphic that James Nesbitt did with the lion roaring and the dragon kind of doing. But as Chuck said from his message for Tucson, the dragon wants to devour what is new in the first 3 years of this decade. And boy, have we not seen the warfare in this first 2 years. Well, you know, 2020, life as we knew it ceased to exist. And, you know, although people are just like, oh, this is not the new normal. Well, yeah, it is the new normal. You know, it's not for us to be isolated and wear masks. That's not the right new normal, but it is a new normal. We couldn't continue doing what we had done in the last season because we're in a season of war. And he said, Chuck said, the first 3 years will be intense through Passover of 2023. Say, woohoo! He also said, what has tried to stop movement in the past needs to be confronted. And that's something that, we need to, where have we been moving in the Lord, with the Lord, that got stopped? I feel, I want to be careful how quizzing me for literally, 2 hours on the spiritual history of Arizona. Oh, thank you, Jesus. I just got my thought back. And I talked to them about how difficult it's been to occupy. Where we've had breakthroughs, we've done some great assignments, but to establish that occupying force to maintain it.
Yep.
And I said, it's been hard. It's been hard to establish the beachheads and then expand from it. It feels to me, having mobilized prayer in Arizona for a long time, in actuality, here's a sidebar, so help me get back here if I need to, on this rabbit trail. Tuesday, 2/22, is our 12th anniversary of Light the Fire becoming an official corporation in Arizona. And what happened with that was we were under another ministry that allowed us to be kind of, they were an incubator for us to kind of get our feet under what we were doing, and that started in 2006, and we'd started mobilizing the torch, but we knew that it was time for us to have our own identity. We were feeling in the spirit realm that we weren't autonomous, that there was confusion over who we were as a ministry because we were under another ministry, and they were amazing and gracious, and we're so thankful that they allowed us to do that because it allowed us to mature a little bit in our calling. But we knew it was time to become our own entity and do the 501c3 and get all our corporation papers and what have you. And we actually submitted them in November of 2009 because it takes a moment to happen.
Sure.
And when we got our official paperwork back, it was stamped 2/22. And I went, that just might be a little bit prophetic.
Oh my goodness.
Of all the dates. So, we were establishing something in that new place. And, I just think it's interesting just where we're at prophetically, because I'm always going to see things through the lens of the prophetic. And here we are, 12 years later, and I've seen some stuff in what really is 16 years of mobilizing prayer in the state. And I've seen the ebbs and the flows. And one of the challenges has been, how do we occupy? How do we maintain the breakthroughs? And I don't know that I have the answers for that. We're still trying to figure that out. But I know that part of it is tied to the apostolic and having the fivefold in place, because that is the wineskin for which to pour things out. So as we look at, that's another one of our questions. I didn't put it necessarily up on the PowerPoint. What has tried to stop movement in the past that needs to be confronted? What has stopped it? I don't necessarily have the answer to that, but I've seen it get stopped.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of a little tired of the false starts. We got to be pressing forward. Amen?
Amen.
So Nehemiah went by the dragon well, and we're going to look at what needs to be confronted. And then he went to the dung gate. And Chuck's quote from this was, build from everything you have waded through, build from it and use it as fertilizer for the future.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just one of those God things as I'm putting the PowerPoint together and I'm Googling cow dung with a picture
Right.
to put with this quote.
Look at that great picture.
Isn't that a great picture?
Yeah.
Well, it has a great story behind it. So the story is this, and it was from New Delhi, India. It says, like consumers around the globe, Indians are flocking to the online marketplace in droves these days. This was from, I think, 2014. But there's one unusual item flying off the virtual shelves. Online retails say cow dung patties are selling like hotcakes.
Wow.
Great fire starters.
Hold that thought.
Oh, my goodness.
The patties, cow poop, and I'm quoting exactly from the article, mixed with hay and dried in the sun, made mainly by women in rural areas, are used to fuel fire
Yeah.
and have long been available in India's villages. But online retailers, including Amazon and eBay, are now reaching out to the country's ever-increasing urban population, feeding into the desire of older city folks to harken back to their childhood in the village. Some retailers say they're offering discounts for bulk orders. Some customers, and this, I'm telling you, this is the quote. This is not Deb's word, this is the quote. Some customers are even asking for gift wrapping.
Oh, my goodness. Good wrapping. Ooh, yeah.
So, Cece punched my punchline.
We saw that in Indonesia.
You saw that in Indonesia.
Yeah.
But you know, Chuck talked about using the dung from this past season that we've waded through
Yeah.
to start a new passion, to awaken fire and to rekindle us. So all the poop that we have waded through in this last season, we are to use it as kindling, to light new fires, and to awaken a new passion. But I thought, what a great story to illustrate. And I was just looking for a picture of cow dung.
And you got the answer.
And I got the answer. So, a little bit of levity. So we are in a new era of warfare. And warfare, as Chuck says, means conflict. We must determine to rule based on your decree and what you are responsible for. The way you cross over is key. And we know we're in this crossover season. And that's why our decree and what's coming out of our mouth is so important. I'm not going to look. But it's important. We've got to line out what's coming out of our mouth. We've got to have a congruent confession of what God is saying.
Amen.
Because the enemy is screaming. And we've got to shut down the noise of what the enemy, the static in the atmosphere, the fear, and I'm beating the drum that I've been beating for years now. But it is so important what is coming out of our mouths. And it has to be the confession of the Lord. It has to be scripture. And not get in agreement with what the enemy is saying. And we must determine our rule based on the decrees that we're making. And that was part of the conversation that we were having with these two couples last night, because I kind of gave them all the lowdown, rundown, bad stuff. And they're like, well, we don't exactly want to move to Arizona. I said, but wait. I just told you the bad stuff. And at the end, they even said, well, what else bad do we need to tell us? I told you the bad stuff. But look at the destiny that we have, the prophetic destiny and the promise. And, Chuck is still saying, and not that Chuck is, we're not elevating him up beyond he's a man. But we, as 2 Chronicles 20:20 says, we are going to honor the prophetic words.
That's right.
And we're going to contend with those prophetic words until we see them manifested. And I was reminded, I shared with them, and I want to share this at this point too, what Cindy Jacobs prophesied. Let's start the year off right in Tucson. She said, Arizona is the point of the spear for revival. This is our destiny. And it's going to break out in unusual places. He has chosen you because you're going to be fire starters, because we've got cow patties we're going to burn.
There we go.
Got a head start.
Got a head start. But Cindy went on to say, but are you willing to sell out 100%? Are we all in? Here we come back again, full surrender, all in. Because we can't be on the fence. There's too much at stake. She went on to say, we're called to be pioneers of prayer. God is calling you to cry out from the secret place. But there comes a time where God must answer the prayers. And God is about to do that in Arizona. And that's our resolute stand, that we're not moving from. God still, his eye is still on Arizona. We will see a glory explosion. We will see the revival that we have cried out for decades if we don't faint. Nehemiah 2:19 says, our adversaries lost no time. Joining Samaritan governor Sanballat, the Horonite, and official Tobiah, the Ammonite, was the Arab named Geshem. When they heard of our plans, they mocked us and ridiculed us. And are we not hearing that in the media? And, I was just reminded, even when I was putting this together, of Rabshakeh. And what was it? Isaiah 36, and he's standing on the walls just mocking and relentless. It's been mocking, it's been relentless. What's being released in the airways, what's being released in the media. And Nehemiah experienced the same thing. They heard of our plans and they mocked and ridiculed us. But here's Nehemiah's response. I think it's interesting because what is the date today? It is 2/20, right? So Nehemiah's response in chapter 2, verse 20, is the true God of heaven will give us success. We are his people, servants who will begin the work of rebuilding our city and this wall. But you will have no share of the work because Jerusalem is not yours. And is talking about Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem. You will have no share of this work because Jerusalem is not yours, civically, legally, or religiously. Now I could take a whole nother sermon unpacking those three things. Because that really is, like Jesus said, beware of the leaven of Herod and the Pharisees. It's that religious spirit and that political spirit. And that was what was coming against Nehemiah in the rebuilding. But despite the opposition, they returned to building. We're going to fast forward a little bit to Nehemiah 4:6. So we returned to building, focused and determined to work as one people. Did we not hear that in our time of praying? We stacked rock upon rock until one end of the wall met the other, and it grew to half of its original height. When the news of that few remaining gaps in the wall were rapidly closing, and our city was beginning to heal. I remember Chuck said, reproaches that could not be broken in the past season will be broken in this season. It's time to see the land get cleansed and healed. That's breaking the curses. Nehemiah, hold your horses a minute because this is a big chunk of scripture and then I'll unpack it. Nehemiah 4:13-20 says, So I strengthened our defenses. I placed men armed with anything they had on hand, the swords, spears, and bows they used for hunting, at the vulnerable low sections along the wall that were exposed. I organized them by families. I stood up and addressed and gathered the nobles, the officials, and anyone who was close at hand. Nehemiah says, Do not be afraid of these people. Instead, remember the eternal, your great and awesome Lord. Fight for your people, your sisters and your brothers, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your homes. Our enemies have intended to defeat us through surprise, but they learned that we were aware of their plans and ready for their attack. The true God has frustrated them, so we went back to work on the wall at our assigned places. From that day on, I divided my people into two groups. One group worked on the wall while the others stood guard, fully prepared for battle in armor, shield, spear, and bows. Officers were close at hand, posted right behind the Judean builders. The builders did their work now with swords strapped on their sides. Even common laborers carrying building materials did so while carrying a weapon. So even while we're busy working, we're supposed to be armed and ready, armed and dangerous. I kept the men whose responsibility it was to warn everyone of attack by sounding the trumpet with me at all times. Once again, I addressed the nobles and the officials and gathered the people. This is Nehemiah speaking. The massive scope of our important work here has caused us to be spread out across the wall. As a result, we are separated and vulnerable. We got to link up. We got to shore up and be united. Therefore, if you hear the sound of the trumpet, drop what you are doing and join us with the alarm when the alarm sounds. Be assured, the true God will fight for us. So I'm going to end with a few keys from Nehemiah. As one. I love that picture from Gladiator.
Yeah.
Lock your shields and stay as one. So Nehemiah 4:6-7 says, We returned to building, focused and determined to work as one. We stacked rock upon rock until one end of the wall met the other, and it grew to half its original size. When the news that the few remaining gaps of the wall had rapidly closed and our city was beginning to heal, it strengthened our defenses. In a prior visit that Chuck made to Arizona, he instructed us to look at Arizona's redemptive gift. And we did the whole training on the redemptive gifts for us individually, but this was in context of what is Arizona's redemptive gift. So as I did research on this, Arizona's redemptive gift is the gift of prophet. So here's some behavioral characteristics of a prophet redemptive gift as it pertains to a region rather than a person. Resistance to bondage or being told what to do. We don't have that problem in Arizona, do we? Bitterness. Elections are highly contested and there are ancient disputes. Extreme discrimination, yet a heart for the poor. There's a drive for excellence, a profound ability to communicate, ideological ideas and trailblazing. Arizona, take the point. Profound despair when hope is taken away. I may or may not have resembled that remark recently. You know, the enemy likes to get us into that place of hope deferred and despair when hope is taken away. So we have to guard against that. Quick to take initiative in conflict. The stronghold is fragmented relationships. And have we not experienced that, any of us that have lived in Arizona in any amount of time? The enemy works overtime to keep us fragmented. The root iniquity is acceptance of normalization of bitterness, where it's okay to stay bitter. No, it's not. Virtues that foster for effective intercession is an investment in relationships, both new and ones that have been broken in the past. Cultivate relationship with God first and foremost, but be intentional about spiritual fathering and mothering, nurturing and discipling the next generation. Signs that you're walking in redemptive gifting is we become a community of racial unity and family restoration. New ideas are released. Champion for spiritual freedom and a warfare anointing. Remember, that's Cindy's prophetic word over Arizona. The enemy is so afraid of Arizona because we are warriors. Spiritual fathering occurs and the next generation is blessed. I put this whole quote up here so you guys can take pictures. And this is from Prophetic Destiny of a Nation. This is when Chuck and Dutch first came in 2003. And he said, listen to this, guys, because we're still battling this. You know, remember Chuck said, look at things that have stopped things in the past. We're still battling this. Competition has led to accusation. This state is more important than you know. Even back then, and Arizona was a big hot mess in 2003, and Chuck and Dutch wouldn't have cared. They said that they would never have cared if they ever came back to Arizona or not. You know, lovely people, couldn't break through prophetically. It was very, very hard to hear from the Lord. It was like there wasn't a continual current like in electricity. It was like there was not a flow. But they were prophesying then, this state is more important than you realize. You control the flow of the river. I long for the river to rise within you. You regulate it and cause it to flow out to other places. But accusation has dammed the river. He said, declare that this death over the church from accusation will lift. The mantle and shroud of death is shifting in this hour, and the spirit of bitterness is being broken. If that's not a prayer point, because we're still battling this. We're still battling competition that's led to accusation. Our next Nehemiah point out of Nehemiah 4:13 and 14. So I organized them by families. Fight for your people, your sisters and your brothers, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your homes. The Lord gives us different passions and opportunity to plug in with families to fight for those things that are important to us. That is why we've been we continue to be intentional about giving opportunities to hear about prayer assignments in our state and ways that you can get involved, as well as opportunities to connect and build relationships. And we believe that's a very important reason why we gather, not just as our family here, but beyond that. And, that's been, in a way, our frustration of just this season that we're in, and why we're making some decisions, Jack and I personally, because we can't be out of the game. We've got to start gathering beyond our tribe and pulling other people together and doing the glory gatherings and bringing in people who are going to speak prophetically into our state, and then we're going to do something about it. As Nehemiah 4:15 says, we went back to work on the wall at our assigned place. Again, it's important to know our assignment. There are so many opportunities for us to engage in prayer in our state. And we have to know what is our portion personally and what is our portion corporately, like the Fire Training Center or SPAN. Kind of interact those two, because that's who Jack and I are responsible for. We're responsible for the tribe here, and we're responsible for mobilizing strategic prayer with Arizona SPAN. Sometimes I believe we can get overwhelmed with opportunities. We laugh and say it's a target-rich environment. And we have to know which is your assigned forehead of the giant, because you can't go after them all. Know your assignment. And don't try and force your assignment onto somebody else's. God may be calling you to do something, but that doesn't mean to say that they're calling the person sitting next to you to that same assignment. And that's so important to know and be true to what God is calling you to do. I think of the picture of swimmers, when they dive into the pool in the race, they stay in their lane. They know the lane they're supposed to be on, and they're fixed on the finish line, and they're not wondering, they're not trying to get in somebody else's lane. Know the lane you're assigned to. And don't try and do somebody else's assignment, because that will get you in a world of trouble. Because you won't have the grace to do it. And you'll actually open yourself up to a tremendous amount of warfare if you try and do an assignment that you're not called to do. And it's hard, it's like, as Sheldon shared tonight about, is there something with Alaska? Yes, there is. And as much as we would desperately love to be boots on the ground in the assignment, oh my gosh, would we ever? I think we're probably going to be base camp, and we've got to be okay with that and be supporting those who are boots on the ground. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
As I said, sometimes it can be overwhelming with the opportunities. The key is to know what the Lord has called you to do. And we need to all be in our right places. And communication is key. We don't want to be tripping over each other And the Lord really kind of spoke to me with, I kind of actually got a bit giggled on this, because with this whole thing with SatanCon, we had been alerted about it months and months and months ago, and the day before the event, my phone is blowing up. Did you guys know about this? I was like, yeah, we're not that asleep on the wall. Yes, we've been doing it, and we did our piece of the assignment. We had people who were boots on the ground multiple times. We had scouting expeditions.
Oh, yeah.
We had people who were praying for those who were boots on the ground. Even our little sphere had multiple assignments within that piece of the assignment. And, lots of people, they were out there picketing, they were praying, they were, lots and lots of people doing lots and lots of prayer assignments. And I kind of pondered it at the end in the context of Arizona's redemptive gift and the severed relationships. And I thought about, wow, were we really moving as one? There may have been a lot of separate assignments, but were we as a state unified? And I had to walk away with the answer of no, because key players in our state didn't have a clue of what the other people were doing. And not that you give all your cards away, but at least that, hey, we got a team out doing this. Can you be covering us? What are you hearing from the Lord for your portion? But there was no communication. And I felt very convicted of the fact of being a leader of prayer in the state of Arizona. I need to do a much better job of communicating. I can't rely on somebody else to do all the communicating. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I can't just say, well, so-and-so, that's really their assignment, and, I'm not going to talk to them about it. We have a responsibility, and I think that that's part of where, as a state, I feel like we've lost ground. Because we're not co-laboring in the way that we should. And, personally, I can't say, well, they didn't do it, so why should I not do it? That's no excuse for me. And felt like, wow, we got to be a little bit more intentional about communicating and working together if we're going to really see this state shift. I don't know what that looks like, but we've at least got to try. Mm-hmm. So that was my takeaway on SatanCon. We are strengthened when we gather. This was another point from Chuck. It's a time to build. A new church is arising and seeing the kingdom begin to manifest. Watch the church reform, demonstrate how we gather, and he will demonstrate through our gatherings. How are we fellowshipping together, and how are we warring together? Nehemiah 4:19 and 20 says, the massive scope of our important work here has caused us to be spread out across the wall. As a result, we are separated and vulnerable. Therefore, if you hear the sound of the trumpet, drop what you're doing and join us when the alarm sounds. Be assured the true God will fight for us. And going back to SatanCon, we were separated and vulnerable because we had lots of different assignments, but there was no trumpet sound to really rally corporately for the state. And I've got to do a better job of that. Because when we are separated, we are vulnerable. And going back to our conversation with our two couples that we had dinner with last night, you know, they were saying, you know, what about Arizona? What about Arizona? And I said, you know, I really feel like it's about establishing those apostolic beachheads. And when I was praying in the Spirit, and I was over at the map of Arizona and looking at just how incredibly vast Arizona is. And the Lord reminded me of a time when we were doing 24/7 prayer, doing the torch. We were actually at North Phoenix Vineyard in their prayer room, and they had all these maps. And I was just praying over, it was a map of the U.S., and then there was a map of Arizona. There was also a map of Alaska connected, and it's like, wow, Alaska is like huge, because usually you see it just like the map that we have on the wall. You know, Hawaii and Alaska are like separated by themselves. You don't see them connected to realize just how huge Alaska is. So the Lord started really speaking to me, though, because I was getting ready to go and speak in Scotland and talk about mobilizing 24/7 prayer. And as I looked at Arizona, the Lord started speaking to me that Arizona really is the size of a small nation. And it has international borders, like a nation would have. And we deal with some incredible dynamics as a state. And then I started doing some research and realized that we could fit Scotland in Arizona like 3 or 4 times. To put it in perspective, the territory that we're really looking at and why we need each other, why we need these apostolic beachheads and connecting in to those locations in other counties. That's why we did Tent America, and we were so, the Lord wanted us to tent each county seat, get our feet on the ground. We did a Nehemiah night ride around the entire state of Arizona. Jack and I, and we had different people coming with us on different pieces of that assignment, but we had our feet on the ground at every single county seat before we did Tent America. And we did another surveying, and we tried to connect in with those apostolic leaders and speak into them and bless them. And, you know, how can we partner with you for our state? And, you know, I'm so excited, and this is one thing that we can really pray about, is one of the truly apostolic leaders that we connected in with was in Flagstaff, and his name is Daniel Williamson. And he was, you know, Daniel was just amazing during Tent America. He helped us with resources. We didn't have an insurance policy. They covered the insurance for us. We needed a $2 million rider, and they just did it. And I mean, it was a real co-laboring of the state in that gathering. And when we were with Daniel, I'd had a couple of conversations, but we'd never met before. And we prophesied, you know, he truly is an apostle, but I could see a governmental mantle on him. And I saw on Facebook probably about a week ago that he is running for mayor.
Oh my goodness.
So we need to be praying for Daniel. You know, we need that governmental apostle. And I believe that God is anointing him to do that. He's been involved in the government mountain, not just in the church mountain. So, you know, pray for Daniel. And, you know, we'll support him in that in whatever way we can, because that's coming together and working together as a state. Because the work is massive. And we need each other. We need each other desperately. In closing, I was just, again, when we were praying in the Spirit, the Lord had me, you know, Nehemiah, it took him 52 days to rebuild the wall. And we knew that when we did the torch the first year, it was 52 weeks. And we felt like that was a prophetic picture of even what the Lord wanted to do in Arizona as we did this Nehemiah night ride of 52 different locations of 24/7 prayer throughout the state of Arizona. But the Lord started speaking to me again about how it took Nehemiah, you know, and they rallied together, and it took them 52 days to rebuild the wall. And the Lord said, count how many days till Passover. And on 2/22,
Wow.
it is 52 days until Passover. What we will be doing in those 52 days, I'm not exactly sure, just being real with you, because it's kind of hot off the press. But I think it's significant that we build that wall of prayer, praying for our state for this next 52 days leading up into Passover, so that we're ready to cross over. Amen?
Amen.
So that's what I got. And then just to confirm that this was, I was supposed to share about Nehemiah, Maria had a dream that I was speaking on Nehemiah. So, woo! So why don't we all stand, and Jack, you want to help me pray and close this down? Was this helpful?
Very excellent.
Right.
So I would encourage you to watch Glory Zion. This morning's Chuck did a lot of prophesying during the worship time, and then Robert Heidler did a message on faith.
Great message.
And also encourage you to the Christ the Healer book, to read that if you have a spouse or something, or at least read it out loud. Get that into your system if you still believe for healing. That was really a textbook they used in a couple of Christian colleges. And I was reminded that in Pishka and Yodemans, or what was that? Yodemans, they had a house that they would take people in. There's something like John G. Lake's, you know, the healing rooms. But this one lady was on a deathbed upstairs, and they were given scripture, read scripture, and told this lady to say this over and over: I'm not under the curse. I'm not under the curse. You know, and it sounded dry after a while, but she kept saying, I'm not under the curse. And the wife was downstairs making breakfast. She heard this pitter-patter. It was that lady come down and said, guess what? I'm not under the curse. So there's something about Scripture, saying it out loud and believing it. You know, how the hard mouth confession is made. So I just want to encourage you to really, that Christ the Healer is a really good textbook if you get past chapter 1.
Yes.
We've warned you.
So Father, we just thank you for the building up of your people tonight, that by your word and prayer time we had, and believing that there's a blockage that was released, so the flow, the stagnation could flow correctly, and a cleansing out individually and corporately here, Father. So we just declare it's just going to be a continual flow in our lives in Jesus' name, and that we're going to see a movement in our own lives. And as we put the word into practice that we've heard every time we meet. So Father, I just bless them with the heart of being teachable and hearing your voice, even through the teaching and as they read your word, Lord, that we are an army. You're building, maybe small in our little location, but you had Gideon's army, which to accomplish what you want to accomplish. So we just ask your blessings on this Gideon's army, Lord, and help us always be watchful, like they passed the test doing that, not to be deceived. Always watch and pray as we're commanded in scriptures to do. So Father, I thank you for the strength for that, and the heart for that to press forth. I just keep hearing that pressing. We're in a time where we're pressing forth. You know, that's the birthing something in this last days. So we thank you for that, that you have a people that you picked, a remnant, not all will pay the cost of that. So we thank you, you have a people who says yes. As your blessing on them, as we send them forth out of here to do exploits. We look forward to hearing testimonies of those exploits in their daily lives and environment and